who is going to present this evening.
Thank you for that introduction. Today's goal, we have the objectives, I always get ahead of it, but our really goal is to give you an overview of the AAP services that Fairfax County offers from kindergarten all the way to 12th. Are you able to see the slides okay?
No, they're a little shifted, Mr. Gray.
Okay, hold on one second here. Oh, here we go. Apologize for that. Doing double screen here. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna skip the ground activity just due to time though. But like I said, our session outcome is gonna be about the level of services. Actually, I already caught myself. They've kind of changed the terminology to level to like different types of services. So if you catch me saying level of services, you can give me a virtual little slap on the wrist. But I'll try the best I can not to say different levels of service. But if you've had a student in the AAP environment in the past, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you're new to this whole process, then you're probably like, what is Mr. Gray talking about? But like I said, we're going to go through all the different, I'm going to use continuum of services from kindergarten to 12th. So why are we doing this? Because we believe that every student deserves an excellent education. And there's research that shows that when educators, families, and students all work together, we can maximize their academic and social performances. Also, high expectations lead to high performance. And we believe that all students need opportunities to kind of pursue their strengths and their interests. So Virginia's Department of Education of Giftedness, I'll let you take a look at it, but you'll see a couple keywords in there as high level of accomplishment. A big buzzword is potential. It doesn't mean and a student has to be performing at a high level on every barometer there is. It's just if we see potential, we want to try to pull that potential into reality. And we're looking at it compared to students in this case of all the same age, experience, and environment. So we wouldn't look at a second grader and we wouldn't compare them against a sixth grader, right? We would keep them all in the same realm for the most part. So Virginia Department of Education gifted regulations, all school divisions must identify gifted students and they must provide instructional services to meet their needs. It's a state requirement. Fairfax County does have their own version of it, but this is coming straight down from Virginia Department of Education. And if I misspeak, Ms. Prindle, you can just jump in and interrupt and interject and correct me. There is a local plan for the giftedness. Like I said, Fairfax County has their own plan for the giftedness. It falls under the state regulations. It's a subset of it. So if you're interested in that, you could always go to the FCPS website. You can find it on there. If you just search for local plan, it'll pop right up and you can take a look at it. There's a great video there and there's some information on that. So the two goals of FCPS really is talent development for all students and differentiation to meet the needs of advanced learners, right? So this is what we want to kind of build in tomorrow's future, right? We want to continue to push talent and find those potential and flush it out like we were saying earlier. What does it look like in Fairfax County? So we have AAP curriculum, we have strategies, we have a process for identification. We have the framework necessary to kind of allow students to pursue their interests. And we also have a framework to kind of capture all students and pull out that potential that we were talking about earlier. And in this case, it could be through the Young Scholars model, in addition to the other different continuums. And we'll talk a little bit more about Young Scholars moving forward. So this slide, what does differentiation for advanced learners mean in Fairfax County Public Schools? It's looking at them individually and looking at their needs. We're looking at, is there a need to differentiate curriculum, whether it's the pace, the complexity, removing scaffolds so that they can go higher than maybe their peers at the time. We also looking to provide an environment for them to be around peers with similar academic and social opportunities to help them promote growth. And we're looking to also provide supports through implementation of the Young Scholars Model. And so there's different ways we look at trying to meet the needs of all students in Fairfax County. So the continuum of services is, like I said, from kindergarten to 12th. Again, you're starting to hear the same stuff coming over and over. There's kind of a theme here, providing deeper learning, right? Talent development. All students is another key here. And we're building on their strengths and abilities, right? We're also trying to provide this multiple entry points to meet the diverse student needs through the different continuum of services. So there's different ways we can meet their needs. Like we were talking about the continuum services, there's some other services that I'll talk about as we move forward a little bit. And one of the things we do recognize is it's not a static thing. It's not like if a student was identified today in one area, like they're not going to change. We can recognize that in a month's time, that student potential may pop up and their services may be different a month, a year, a couple years. So that's something that we constantly recognize, and we're constantly looking at all the students yearly. We're also looking at a monthly. So there's several opportunities where we kind of keep an eye on and seeing if that potential needs to be flushed out. Flush is going to be my favorite word for the night. I've already used it 3 times. So this is the overview from all the way from kindergarten to 12th. If you just want to look at this is the global. So we're obviously going to focus heavily on the elementary school part. On the left side, we'll go through it all in detail. We'll briefly overview the middle school so that you can get a sense of where your child may be headed and what type of path they might want to take. And then we'll also show you a little bit with the high school, and then we'll take some questions at the end unless there's something really pressing. And Miss Prindle's monitoring the chat, so if there's a question, she might be able to answer right within the chat. So the Young Scholars Model, which I was talking about earlier, it's a complimentary service for some students in grade K to 12. So let's learn a little bit more about this model. So this model seeks to identify and affirm from an early age students with high academic potential from groups historically underrepresented in advanced academic programming. The goal of the model is to eliminate barriers for young scholars' access to and success in advanced academic opportunities in elementary, middle, and high school. So young scholars will receive subject-specific services. They could receive part-time services or even full-time services, depending on their academic learning needs. The young scholars, if identified, that identification will stay with them through 12th grade. So as they transition from elementary school to middle to high school, teachers and school counselors will understand the students' need for advanced coursework to discuss their academic advice, as well to connect the students with relevant supports depending on their needs. So if you're interested in kind of diving deeper into young scholars, you can go on the FCPS website and write in the word Young Scholars Model, and you'll get more information about the Young Scholars Program. We're also looking at twice exceptional students. One of the common questions is if my student my child has, some type of learning disability, will that affect their ability to get some of these services? No, we're very sensitive to those needs, and most of the teachers, if not all of the teachers, have gone through training for how to work with twice exceptional students, realizing that we just may have to take a different path than we would normally take, right? We got IEPs, 504s, but we will find something that will be successful for every student. And so the path, the strategies, the framework may be different, but the curriculum will stay the same so that they can maximize their potential. So now we're going to dive into just the K-6 elementary services. You'll see you got access to rigor, subject-specific AAP, part-time AAP, and full-time AAP. So like I said earlier, if you have a student that went through the AP services in the past, these would have been levels. So access to rigor would have been level 1, subject-specific AAP would have been level 2. Part-time services would have been level 3, and full-time AP services would be level 4. But our new terminology is right there on the screen. So let's take a look at each of them. So every student gets access to rigor. We have within their curriculum, we have strategies embedded in all of their pacing guides, and there's critical and creative thinking skills, which I'll show you right here. There's nine of those, 9 main ones. There's obviously more, but these are the 9 that are kind of embedded in their pacing guides. And they're also when they come to me for STEAM, besides doing STEAM, I also embed AAP type materials in there, and I typically use these 9 critical and creative thinking skills. We can't get through all of them per grade level. Some of them are more pertinent for certain grades than others, but I would say visualization is one that probably all from kindergarten to 6th grade utilize pretty easily. As you start getting up to the upper grades, you may see encapsulation, which is like being able to come up with concise information. For example, in 3rd and 4th grade, we use license plates as an example for encapsulation, and the students learn how to put a message on a license plate, but they get rid of some of the letters, but that the message still comes through. And so that's a great way for them to kind of learn that. But we learn that through, book talks and stuff like that. How can we just come up with what is the moral of the story? What's the theme of it? That would be an example of encapsulation. In some of the rigor, depending on their program of studies and their pacing guides, they have access to different materials. Here are some of the materials. There's M cubed is the one with the parrots on the bottom. There's some Jacob's ladder, which goes through different reasoning, different complexity. It's called a ladder because just like you go up a ladder, they have levels of questioning. When you're looking at a nonfiction guide, in this case, you would look at something like, it may be just like, what are 5 facts in the story? And then it may look at what is, can you put something in order of the story in order? And then the top part of the ladder might be like, what was the overall theme of the story? So shows a level, so that Jacob's ladder shows a level of complexity. It's teachers find it really helpful because they can utilize that when working with a whole class. They can say, all right, I want Johnny to work on the middle ladder and the upper ladder, or they call them 1, 2, 3 in the store in the Jacob's ladder. And so you can, I guess basically you could say a teacher has the ease to kind of differentiate within one assignment just by looking at it and having students do different parts of the ladder. The Survive and Thrive is a science unit. They go into a lot of stuff looking at real world application. They look at the science behind it, obviously, and they really bring up some interesting information in there, and they really get the students to kind of provoke thinking in there. A lot of the whys and hows of stuff, not just digging for facts. And then the mini Qs is like a history unit where you kind of look at different pieces of literature or situations, and they kind of analyze documents, and they come to conclusions based off of the different themes or topics. So this is that all the teachers have access to this. There's no referrals or screening process needed for this access to rigor. All these resources are throughout the school. Some are in their classroom, some are in my room, and teachers come to visit me to grab the materials as they need it. Now we're getting into subject specific AAP, where we're looking at different. A student may be performing better in one subject over another, and they may need some differentiation in that. So this is where the teacher will look at their pacing guide, and a lot of their pacing guides have they're differentiated within their pacing guide. So this is where they would just kind of tap into maybe the differentiation piece of it. A lot of parents are like surprised. They're like, oh, my student's being differentiated in language arts, and they didn't even know. It's just because, teachers these days are so trained to differentiate within the classroom and to work in small groups and stuff like that. Your child may not even know they're being differentiated. They may just think it's their everyday schooling. So this is one that's usually parents are kind of surprised. Typically, if we have this is a 1 year service, and then the teacher will review it the following year to see if the service is still needed moving forward. But I lost my train of thought, what I was just going to say there. Just that it's maybe it'll come back to me, but just that it's yearly, and that the teachers are trained to do this, and letters have gone out in the last 2 weeks if your child is qualified for it. That's what I was going to say. And we look at students yearly. Ms. Prindle, I, and a small committee will look at all the students every year in the spring and look for what services they think they may need. And then within the school year, like a teacher will commonly come up to me and go, oh, I'm looking at Bill, and I think he may need some additional services in science. So then we would explore the possibility of this subject specific services. And a student can have more than one. There is in each school is going to be different how they administer the stuff, but like I just said prior, Miss Prindle and I, and usually the classroom teachers of that grade level, and maybe a counselor or a vice principal might be in there, and there's not really a need for a referral form. It says submit a referral form. Some schools require this as a process. The only time I would say you want to submit a referral form if it's like in the middle of the year and you haven't heard anything, and you really believe that your child needs some subject specific services, then you can send in a referral form. But like I said, we look at them annually from kindergarten all the way up to 6. So just know that we are looking at your child. So if your child's already a second or third grader, we have looked at them for multiple years. If you are to submit the referral form, if you notice on the side there, says we will notify you within 30 business days regarding the committee's decision. And then in May, all students are also considered for subject specific services for the following school year. That's when we meet May, early June to make those decisions, depending on our scheduling. Part-time services. This is when we're starting to look at students that have advanced academic abilities in multiple subject areas. So they may need some part-time AP services. In our school, in grades 3 to 6, that's actually when the part-time services starts in 3rd grade. I will work directly with them weekly, and we're usually giving them kind of I'm trying to think what's the right way to put it, but we look at the full-time services, and we give them exposure to what the full-time services will offer. And for example, right now, 3rd grade is looking at renewable and non-renewable services, and there's a simulation where there's an island where it has air pollution and it's got water pollution and has a couple other problems in the island, and they have to figure out how best to solve those problems, kind of a real world situation. So they learn about non-renewable services resources, and they try to figure out like which ones are going to be best in the island and which ones are gonna help solve the problems in the scenario. Again, this is just the same slide. I'll just say the same thing. We look at it manually, but if you really feel like you need to submit a form, the process is the same as the subject specific AAP services. The part-time services will continue to grade 6 if identified. This one is not yearly. This one is one, if you're identified in 3rd grade, it would continue in 4th, 5th, and 6th. The only thing is you would get an invitation every year just to participate in the pull-out program, which we call it. And just to make sure, sometimes there's social situations or academic, maybe they need to be in the classroom a little bit more, depending on when the timing is. And so if you deny a service one year, it doesn't mean that the next year you're denied. You can easily go right back and participate in the service, and you can come back in even mid-year if you're interested. Full-time AAP services. All right, this is something that starts in grade 3. Grade 2 is when you go through the whole process. There will be another meeting if this is why you're on the call, to kind of learn about the full-time AAP services. We'll have a separate meeting that will go through all the nuts and bolts of how to go through the process. In this meeting, all we're doing is talking about the different services. But the full-time AAP services, it's differentiated in all the 4 contents, and they have access to a peer group with similar academic needs. In our school, we have each grade level in 3rd through 6th has one full-time AAP class with one teacher who's been trained or is in the process of being trained for AAP services for teaching AAP students. Obviously the curriculum is differentiated. Biggest thing is there's an acceleration. The depth and complexity of content is really heavy in the full-time AAP services. Really looking at real world application, really looking kind of expand their strengths, and really looking at the curriculum from a conceptual standpoint rather than a skill-based. Like I said, the process, we will go in depth if you're going through it. The fall screening is already passed, but the spring screening, the deadline for if you're here for the part-time, full-time services, you need to have your information in by December 15th. You can send me an email or Miss Prindle an email, probably me. If you want to CC Miss Prindle, that's fine. Take a little load off. I think she's kind of busy to begin with, but so that's kind of my job. So if you want to send it to me, I will get you all set up so that you can properly prepare for it. But like I said, there will be a meeting that we will go through all the nuts and bolts on how to properly go through the process. But the one thing that you need to know is December 15th is the hard deadline if you're looking to go for full-time AAP services. The county is very stringent on this, rightly so. Every year we get between 7,000 and 8,000 applicants. So it's very imperative that they have a deadline and keep to the process. And then there's a whole, if you're going through this process, there's a whole test and an identification timeline, which we'll go into the next meeting, and you can find some online too if you want. You just go FCPS, and I think it's just look for AAP services, and it will pop up. One of the things we offer an ability test to all students. It's called a universal screener. It's just one of the things that Fairfax County has for, we would like to have one national scored task, that's not the right word. Ms. Prindle, help me on how you phrase the Cogat and Naglieri's. They're called nationally
They're
norm.
they're they're normed abilities tests.
norm-
Essentially, IQ
yeah,
test is an easiest way to think about it.
yeah. Thank you. So each student will have one. First grade is generally it's called the Naglieri. It's a little bit more nonverbal. It's not doesn't have heavy on words and analyzing that. It's more visual. And then in second grade they go through the COGAT. Now, if a student is language may be an issue, we may give them the Naglieri, even though in second grade the Coggett may be what they're normally supposed to get, right? But so Fairfax County wants every student to have at least one of these testings in their file, and then if after that the Fairfax County will allow one retest from up until sixth grade, and that the reason for that is maybe the student that day just wasn't, their mental capacity wasn't there, they were sick, or there was something going on in their uh, home life that kind of they weren't allowed to focus on it. That you can have the one-time retest. Now, none of those happen, and you decide to take a retest. We would suggest usually wait in 2 years before you retest if you're going to take that route, because research has shown that not much progress normally takes within those two-year windows. We generally see if you try to go like a year, you pretty much get the same scores if given this scenario, if you didn't have any of those earlier situations that I was talking about. So this testing, it's obviously best practices in matching students to AP services, but we're looking at them as the whole student. So that's just one of the data points that we look at when, or I should say the county looks at when determining whether students should be in a full-time AP services or a part-time services, right? There's look, we take teacher consideration, there's a hope scale, we look at work samples, but so they're all weighted kind of equally, and it's, I guess, the best thing that we'd normally been saying in the last couple of years. It's kind of like a college application where we're looking at the well-rounded student. We're not just one student could have a really high test score, but their work samples are not very strong, and there's not a great teacher advocacy there, and there's not a lot of data points that are support and that student may need a certain type of services. So they take all of them into consideration. Obviously, the more that you have higher, if you have several of them, then the greater chances that you may need some additional services. So that's pretty much the elementary part of the academic program. So I'll go through this really quickly, unless we have a bunch of questions we want to address with the elementary before we move on. Miss Prindle's the MC over there, the chat master. Is there questions we need to address now, or do we want to go through this first?
I saw Miss Mosso's question that I can answer.
Okay.
So it's I've been answering the other questions in the chat. A couple of
Okay.
those were should I put the packet in for my child or should I wait for the teacher to do that? My answer is if you believe that your child requires those levels of service, please do not wait for the teacher to do it. The teacher and staff will supplement whatever you put forward. But we want to make sure that if that's something that you are thinking about, that you kind of take your part there. Can you explain when a student should be eligible to go to Canterbury Woods for AAP? Is that different than full-time AAP or level up? Okay, so the FCPS is changing the terminology around advanced academics. So I was trying, and I'm working through it with Mr. Gray, just like trying to make sure we get the terminology correct. So full time is the same as level 4. They're just trying to shift their language from level 4 to full time. Canterbury Woods is our center site. So Canterbury Woods has level 4 programming, and Wakefield Forest also has level 4 programming. At Canterbury Woods, they have usually 2 full-time advanced academics classes per grade level. So families have a choice between going to Canterbury Woods to receive level 4 services or receiving the same services at Wakefield Forest. They are the same. The training's the same. The curriculum is the same. Um, Ms. Moravak asked what data points are taken into consideration. So there are a lot of data points. Some of them are parent perspective, and the application has a summary component and has a parent questionnaire component. I would encourage families to fill those in because it does give a perspective of what kiddos are doing outside of school. Mr. Gray, you might be able to best speak to the hope
Yeah.
scale part, and then we also have the COGAT and the Naglieri that Mr. Gray talked about.
Yeah, so the hope scale is just it looks at their academic and their social performance. It's kind of a um new way to a new data point that we had that used to use what's called the gibbers gifted behavior rating scale, but they weren't able to figure out I guess a psychologist or the scientist that looked at it and didn't figure out that it was um justifiable when they really analyzed this. So they looked at several different ways that you could look at a child's uh, academic performance and their social performance and come up with kind of an equitable way to look at students of um, equal ability, equal age, and so this is the one that they kind of went with. It's we're on year 2 of it. It's not as straightforward as the other one. It's kind of hard to kind of look at it and just say, oh, I can see from this from one, but from looking at it like this is a slam dunk, this is a slam dunk. There's 12 to 14 different things they look at that the teachers will kind of rate them based off of their performance. And they usually fill that out in late January, February, even though if you're submitting information for the full-time services, you have to have all your information in by December 15th. They get about a month or 2 to kind of work on the rest of the materials on behalf of your child, and that's one of the things that they look at. So by then they have a good indication of your child's academic and social performances. We typically lean on the teacher that was before them. Obviously, if they're coming from another school, it's a little harder to do that, but most of our students start in Wakefield Forest and continue on. So it's a small percentage that does that. If they're still in Fairfax County, we could reach out to that teacher and get some additional information. But generally, the current teacher will fill the form out. And then, like we said, there's the testing. We look at, all their testing scores, and then work samples are a really big one. We look at samples that show the how and why, right? Because the full-time services is looking at like information and like what do you do once you know something, what good is that information? How can you apply the information? Right? They're looking at high levels of aptitude and how to use that information. So any type of sample that will show an application of skills or concepts, it's that can give a better picture of like their potential, like we said earlier. Hopefully that answers the question. I see you had COGATs, right? Which that's another one.
August,
Yeah.
they're finishing up right now, and those scores typically arrive after the due date to apply. And so, again, the COGAT is just one piece of the puzzle for that application process. So don't wait for those scores. What you're really looking for is, you should have a sense, particularly after conferences, of how your child is doing. Are they, if they're already, you're hearing from the teacher that they're standing out, or you're hearing that their, VAL scores or iReady scores are really high. Those are also things that you're going to hear that would give you reason to think that potentially an application would be appropriate. Um, there was another question about, who initiates the referrals. It can be a parent or a teacher. There are the scores are looked at, and a group of students is pulled from the data to ensure that we look at those students through the full process, but no students based on those numbers from the COGAT or NAGLI area alone is eligible for services, right? So it's a full package. So sometimes they'll send us a list of kiddos and they'll say, these were kind of maybe the top 10% of the highest scores. And they say, you must screen those students. That screening process still involves, all of the additional work samples, hope scores, parent input, even if their scores hadn't shown up in that top percentile. But nobody based on scores alone is found eligible for services. Um, so I hope that clarifies. And I would not rely on thinking that that's going to happen for your student. If you think that they require this level of service so that they're standing out above where they need full-time services, you should put an application in, and I would recommend highly that you complete every parent component that is recommended, even if it's stated that it is optional. Let's see. Also,
Discuss how no AAP program might be right for your child. That's would be a good one to talk with your teacher during your conferences, just to have an initial conversation with that. You could also reach out to me after having that conversation. I can kind of follow up and talk with you as well. I see all the students weekly, so I have a good sense of most of the students and kind of their aptitudes. So I can kind of help you on that, but that could be two other pieces of information that might help you determine whether to pursue or to kind of hold off. Are there tests that I can do at home with my child? There, not that I know of. There is, George Mason does offer some different types of aptitude tests. If you're interested in that, you can send me an email and I can give you a list, how to, what to look at and test if you want to. But George, like I said, George Mason they're kind of the ones that we partner with for some of the testing parts of it. How will subject-specific AAP for language arts work with the new benchmark and VA law? That's one.
I can answer that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, the way that Fairfax has taken the new benchmark information, they have it's actually pretty seamlessly embedded the ability to enrich and like what enrichment looks like. So, as the teachers are kind of looking through and unpacking those reading standards and writing standards right within it, so like as the third grade team is sitting there and talking and having the conversation about that literacy work right within that same area, it kind of shows what is the enrichment or the advanced work that would align to that. And so one of the reasons that we have at our school, because it's still a small team of 4 at those grade levels, the teachers are able to kind of talk about those lessons. And so like I was just in a team meeting last week where they were, talking about the new unit, and Miss Harris, the third grade advanced teacher, was kind of saying, well, in our lessons, it does this. Like, do you think your kids could access that? And so those are ways that they kind of work together to ensure that there's kind of access across the classes. But it's laid out very nicely for the teachers in that way. If COGAT is received after the application due date, does it still get included? It does. We include it as a school. And when I started my career in administration like 18 years ago, we used to get the scores and we'd have the scores. And what I've come to find is that, they just usually arrive like a week or two after. And so we have them, but it's like as a parent, you don't have it like before. It's like we're getting it like right after the deadline usually, and you won't have it. So I would really be looking at those other things, um, and there's a lot of other factors that you might see, as your kiddo come home and are they driven to do additional research on topics? Are they, a lot of times when we read these packets, parents will be talking about, they come home from school and they've learned this new thing about science, and then they are reading all the books about that topic because they can't wait to tell their teacher, or they're doing extra projects, or they're writing books at home, or those are examples of things that are not, I would say not every student is doing that. And then I would encourage you to look at the packet, because some of the questions that they do ask families, they're looking for, um, what is kind of outside of the box thinking, or, interesting jokes, or, ways of thinking about things. And as a parent, it can be hard to, like, maybe your kid does that all the time, but if you kind of print that out now and are thinking about it, you'll be able to put some really specific examples in there. And that really helps the committee to get a good picture of who your kid is. I'm going to give you an example. You can never tell my daughter, but my sixth grade kiddo, when I was doing her packet, one of the examples I put is that her older sister was learning all about, the body and development. And I came home and found her doing all this research, and she'd like made drawings and notes. And I was like horrified, because I was like, I'm not ready to talk to you about it. But she had, done all these extra things, and had this like really intense interest in that. And I hear from you guys a lot about that. Those are the types of things that are going to stand out, that you want to put in a packet as you're applying, that are going to show, they have this drive or desire to learn more. They're asking me to do more, challenging math at home, and things like that. Those are going to be triggers for you to know, even if you don't have a score, my kid has this like thirst for knowledge, has a creative way of thinking, is really engaged in learning. How do we know if your child has been referred by the teacher? What I'll tell you is the teacher usually only refers a child if the parent doesn't do it and they feel very strongly about the packet. The teachers are going to wait for you as the parent to do that referral. And then if you haven't done it, they're going to say, what I'm seeing with this kiddo, we need to put a packet in for them because the parent didn't do that. And so I would encourage you not to wait for the teacher. You can certainly, when you're having your conference, um, you can ask the teacher kind of what they're seeing in class. But I would base a lot of it on kind of what you're seeing about your kiddo, what you've heard in the last few years about your kiddo, as to whether you apply or not. Is the application to Kindergarten Woods separate? Nope, it's the same. If your child what you're really applying for is for the service. And then if your child is found eligible for the service, then they'll ask you to select which site you want to get the service at, because it's the same, both schools.
All right, great questions.
Yeah, different questions than we've had before.
Yeah. So here's the middle school services. We'll go through the middle school and high school fairly quickly, because obviously they're not pertinent to right now, because if you're on this call, you're pretty much here for the elementary for the most part. But we'll go through it, like I said, just so you know what to expect, right, moving forward. So there in the middle school, there's an IB middle school program. There's also an honors, and the full-time AAP continues. So we'll first look at the IB middle years program, which is in that red box within there. So the International Baccalaureate middle years program is available in some FCPS middle schools, not all of them. The program encourages students to understand the connections between content and the real world through critical and reflective thinking, which is kind of how our elementary school is. Like our new curriculum is really focused on like real world application. It's really exciting to watch students kind of dive into these real world applications. You can find more about the IB if you just kind of go through FCPS and you just search IB MYP. You can find out more information about that. But all middle schools in Fairfax County will offer honors courses. Um, so honors courses will provide challenge in all of the core subjects, and students can enroll in from 1 to 4, to all 4 if they want, right? Fairfax County does encourage that every student at least attend one honors course, find their strength and kind of pursue it at minimum. And so in 6th grade, the counselors and the teachers will kind of work with the students to kind of say, hey, you should really be taking an honors class in this. You should really be looking at, IB, or you're looking at one of the different ones. So there is acceleration in the math content in middle school. 7th grade students who want to take Algebra 1 honors, they can take it if they meet a certain criteria. And Algebra 1 courses are open to all 8th graders. The full-time AAP service, as you notice, the one we've been talking about in a lot of the questions, goes from grades 3 through 8th grade, right? And again, it just continues on when you go into middle school. It's the same as the elementary. They're gonna be differentiated. They're gonna be accelerated. They're gonna be focused on all the core content classes, as well as some of the electives that they have in there. Those won't be the electives won't be full-time AP, but those will be ones that they may kind of tap into based off of their interests. Same process if they're in middle school, same screening process as it is for elementary. December 15th for them for spring screening. They usually find out by late April for K to 6 too as well. Usually find out middle April whether either way, whether your child made it in or not. And then there's an appeal process, and the appeal process will be done before you get up, before the schooling is done in June. So that really helps with moving into the next year. And then it did have they can attend their AAP center or their local middle school, right? Even in middle school, they have the same thing with the centers. High school services, we're already on high school. I told you middle school was pretty short, and high school is as well, right? So it's 9 to 12, meeting advanced needs of high school students. So you got honors, you got AP, you got the IB, you got a dual enrollment course, and you got the Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology. Advanced classes, just like in the middle school, they're offered to all the students. There's the honors courses, the AP courses, the IB dual enrollment, but there's a separate application for Thomas Jefferson. So students could do one or more of these. Actually, I think they can only do one. So honors track or the IB track. Honors classes, just like in the middle school, that's what the core subjects, and if you notice the slides identical to the middle school, so they can choose whether they want to do all 4 or one or more of them. The AP provides students with an opportunity to take college level courses in high school. Right. So it's designed by the College Board in conjunction with university and high school affiliate faculty. Check with your local school to learn more if your school offers the AP program, and if so, what AP courses are offered. I'm not sure. Most students that go to Wakefield Forest will end up going to Woodson. So I'm not sure if Miss Prindle knows all the courses that are offered for Woodson. I can go back to the slide so you can see which ones Woodson will have. We'll do a test here. She looks confident.
Looks confident. So all of our students do go to Woodson under the current boundaries, and I'm hopeful that that will continue. Woodson is not an IB school, so it is focused on honors courses and advanced placement. Um, there are a lot of options, so I don't know that I could name them all, but it does not have IB programming.
Okay, thank you. So the IB is right here, in this slide. We'll probably, so like I said, Woodson, you don't go to it, but this is another opportunity to work on critical thinking and reflection. Really encourages students to look at, be curious, principled, and compassionate. My daughter is currently a junior right now, and she's doing several IB classes, and she says she has noticed a dramatic difference in IB classes. She enjoys them, but she said that they are very challenging. But of course, she loves the challenge with it. So, but it is a great program. One of several great programs that Fairfax County offers. There's just some more information on the IB program. They can explore career pathways while taking the courses. There's like a certain criteria to be able to get an IB diploma, so you have to have a certain minimum number, and some of the classes are actually 2 years long. From my daughter going through it, so currently going through it, so I can speak to that a little bit. And then you can get award credits based on the course exams and individual universal university policy, so that can give you kind of a one up when you're going into college. You may already have some credits are already in your piggy bank in year one of college. Dual enrollment courses are taught at the high school by an FCP teacher. Those are ones where college credit is offered, and there are agreements with colleges or universities. There's a certain requirement you must meet, and they will work with the high school to register you for the course. And each high school determines if they will offer dual enrollment courses based on their needs. You do have some time to kind of look at that if you're interested in that. And Fairfax County does have that on their website as well if you just search dual enrollment. All of this information is on the Fairfax County website, and we will make this recording public afterwards. We'll probably put it on our Wakefield Forest website, and then we can, if you want a copy of it, we can also send you a copy of this presentation. So who to contact? Probably the majority of questions will probably go to me. I put on my email there. You can call the school main office, and they could also get in touch with me via the phone. Obviously, Miss Prindle or Miss Williams, if you really have some questions that I might not be able to answer. And then if you're looking to kind of research for middle and high school, you can just reach out to the current positions for them. And then there is the central AAP office if there's like technical questions you need. I would generally say push the question to me first, or Miss Brenda, Miss Williams, and then if it's a question we can't answer for you, we usually shoot over an email or call the AP office, and they will give us the answer, and then we'll relay it back to you. And then if you want any other information, like I said, almost every slide has information you can find on the Fairfax County website. If you want the AAP specific, enter AAP in the search field. And that pretty much ends our presentation. So if anybody has any questions they would like to just say out loud, or if you want to continue to put them in the chat, whichever you're more comfortable with, we'll be happy to handle either way. See, you probably handled questions.
There were a lot of questions that we handled in the chat, but we're happy to answer any other questions that you might have or provide any other support. Again, the news you choose, I will do a reminder I will do consistent reminders because I don't want anyone to miss the deadline and for that to be the block. Certainly, if you have questions, you can reach out to Mr. Gray. I don't know if you want to put Mr. Gray. I don't know if you want to put your email
Yeah.
in there. Um, I usually try to include it in the newsletter each week so that I know the website kind of blocks my email so I don't get a lot of junk mail. It doesn't work, but that's why they do it. But we're happy to answer any questions you have, and we're here to support. So thanks so much, and we appreciate you guys being here. Um, Mr. Gray and I will try to get this posted in the News You Choose so that you can refer back to it. We appreciate you guys. Have a great night.